One area where I pretty strongly disagree with mainstream Christians is this whole idea of just being submissive. I have a question that's kind of a curveball, but I know you're pretty active in your church. You've mentioned it a few times on this episode, and there's this weird thing, the passage "Render unto Caesar," which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? Where they tried to trap Christ into an unanswerable question. Basically, if he said, that Caesar is not king, then he goes to jail. And if he says Caesar's not king, then he's saying that he is not king, basically. And so I wonder if you have an interpretation of that, the whole render unto Caesar thing. Like, how does that apply in a Bitcoin world? How do you see that? Because one area where I pretty strongly disagree with mainstream Christians is this whole idea of just being submissive to the state and following authorities and doing what you're told, and the meekness and all this. Like, I don't actually think that's what Christ represents at all when I read about him. And so I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I'm trying to think, where is it? There's a book by Bitcoiner. Sorry, Alan. I'm blanking on his name. His name's Pastor Coin on X, but he wrote a book called Render to God, and he covers this topic a bit. So anybody who's interested in the topic, he does a pretty good deep dive on it. But I think that there's a couple things there. I think one, Jesus is saying that the things of heaven are just more important than the things of this world. And so if you're bogged down with the minutia of dealing with political stuff, like, just understand that the kingdom of God is more important. I think that would be kind of like the high level version of that. But as Bitcoiners, we care about the actual monetary. What are the monetary implications of this? I think the things that Christ talks about in terms of, or things that are talked about in the New Testament in terms of being submissive, like Romans 13, submitting ourselves to the authorities, it is counterintuitive on its surface level with some of the things that were shown in other parts of the New Testament or in the Old Testament, where people opposed power structures, or even other parts of the New Testament that talk about the principalities in the government being evil, right? And those types of things. So how do we parlay those two things? Well, if Christ was telling people to obey the highest authority in the land, it was like, yeah, well, don't avoid taxes, because if you get thrown in prison for tax evasion, then you can't do the work of God. So that's one of the components. But it also is like, we should, in general, obey the authority of the land, because that's how we continue to flourish and we continue to work in this thing. That's different in an American society. We don't have a Caesar. We don't have a king. And so if Scripture tells us to, submit ourselves to the highest authority in the land, well, in an American context, it's very different. I mean, that's not the governor, it's not the president, it's not Congress, it's the Constitution. The Constitution is the highest authority that we have in an American culture. And what's beautiful about that is the Constitution is not a set of, or it's not a document that tells us what to do. It tells us specifically how governments will not impact or intrude on your life. And so that's why in 2020, when here in California, when Newsom told our church to shut down, my advocacy for our church was we need to maintain this would actually be evil for us to listen to the governor, because it's easy to say, oh, Romans 13 says submit to the governor. Well, that was in a context where the governor was the highest authority in your life. In this case, the governor is actually acting in opposition to the highest authority. So it would be evil from a biblical standpoint to listen to a governor who is disobeying the Constitution. We have the right to assemble. We literally have the right to assemble. It's granted to us in the First Amendment, in the Bill of Rights. And so a governor that's saying that we cannot do that. One, we're commanded to do it in Scripture. Two, we're allowed to do it by the Constitution. So listening to a governor that opposes that is actually evil, I would say, from a scriptural standpoint. So I think this idea of rendering to God is just understanding in a general context that there's more important things to life than politics. It just is. I think that on the other side of heaven, we'll look back and say, yeah, you know what? I probably was focused too much on money. I probably was focused too much on politics, because I could have possibly spent more time sharpening my soul. I could have spent more time edifying myself and my family to be more prepared for the other side of heaven. But at the same time, God does care about the physical elements of life. He does care about the monetary elements of life. Jesus, the only time he shows righteous anger is in the temple towards the money changer. So God does have a special place in his heart towards money and towards those who are taking advantage of others. So I think that prescription is more of a, hey, if you want to do God's work, it's best not to get in trouble. But in a modern day context, I think we can leverage that to our advantage, because the highest authority in the land actually protects our right to assemble as a church. It protects our right to not be intruded upon by our government.
That's a great answer. And a good framing too of the Constitution as the highest authority in the land. And it's a little bit paradoxical in a way, because what the Constitution is actually saying is that these are the things that government can never infringe upon, right? It's not even granting the things from the government per se. It's just formally recognizing these are the rights, right? The divine natural rights that we have that government has no place to infringe upon. And that's really important, because then, being based on this Christian ethos, the United States Constitution is actually holding the individual to be the highest authority in the land, that the sovereignty of the individual is superordinate to any other authority, ultimately. And so this idea of restricting people from gathering is so crazy. And so the fact that, people would even comply with that, I think it just is maybe a testament to how far we've drifted from our founding values and our founding ethos. To now, for you to resist that, I'm sure you were probably, I'm guessing you were probably among the minority and people that actually wanted to not comply with that. Yeah. Whereas that's literally in our DNA as Americans. That's what America is, right? It's a tax revolt against the Bank of England and all of these things. And so the fact that we've been conditioned, or we've normalized compliance with, political edicts is interesting to me. Was that the case? Were you among the minority and disagreeing with that?
Yeah, initially, for sure. I think that COVID just blindsided so many people and scared so many people that there was just this snap to compliance. We as humans like when somebody's confident and in charge. That's why the best CEOs are the guys that have a clear plan, right? And so that's when Fauci comes out with the clear plan for the path forward, like everybody's going to get in line. I think our church probably woke up to the realities of that a bit faster than most other establishments. I think there was a couple month, kind of gut punch that blindsided, but our church continued to actually meet outside right from the very beginning and stuff. So they never stopped meeting, but went back inside very, very quickly. I would have never gone outside personally, but I understand the pressures. They were worried that they were going to get shut down or forcibly shut down, and that sort of thing. So when you're operating at that level, as a pastor, I understand, because pastors don't spend a lot of their time considering these things, but they've certainly considered them now, and I'm grateful for that. COVID, as terrible as it was, it's one of the best blessings ever for humanity. I think it is going to go down in history as one of the best catalysts for humans en masse understanding the need for individual sovereignty. It was a lightning rod for that type of awakening. And like I said, I've structured my businesses one around like human connection, because that's one element of it. But I think this gets more to the heart of what I'm trying to do individually, like in the things that I'm trying to build, is everything I do is designed to empower individual sovereignty. So that's why, like, we have health and wellness is one aspect of it, because when I'm healthy, I'm not reliant on the establishment. I'm not reliant on government subsidies for my health, or I'm not reliant on anybody else other than myself and my family for my health and wellness. And the things that I choose to do. Same thing with jiu-jitsu and martial arts. I think everybody should do boxing. They should do wrestling. They should do jiu-jitsu. Do something to empower yourself physically, because the ability to know that you can physically protect yourself, it rewires your brain towards individual sovereignty. That's why, for I don't know however many years ago that was, they were saying that going to the gym is right wing. It's going to the gym is conservative. It's because, yes, people that were getting physically fit, they were it was rewiring their brain towards sovereignty. It's like, because when I'm fit, I don't need the doctors as much. I don't need protection as much. It just rewires how we think about things. And so, yes, anything we can do in life to grant others individual sovereignty. That's why I write books. That's why I do these things, because if every individual is sovereign, they're not dependent on me. What do we do in the raising of our children? We try to develop sovereign individuals so that they're no longer dependent on mom and dad. We think that we have about an 18-year window in order to do that. Okay, that's what we've agreed on in society. It takes 18 years to raise somebody from infancy to the point at which they're a sovereign individual and they can be on their own. Society's largely lost sight of that. But for you and I, for the three of us and the Bitcoin community, we see that window as this is the crash course on becoming a sovereign individual. When you get to 18, you're no longer dependent on me. You can function in this world. So yes, there's many elements to that. There's, fiscal prudence and understanding. There's understanding of relationships. There's understanding of health and wellness. There's understanding of self-protection. All these things are packaged into that. Self-sovereignty is a very multifaceted thing. But individual sovereignty is I think the other side of this pendulum. We so often talk about conservatism versus liberalism, and those are very real things. But I think that society, more so than ebbing and flowing between liberalism and conservatism, it's collectivism versus individualism, collectivism versus self-sovereignty. And so if we can get the pendulum to swing or to stay in the direction of self-sovereignty, society is better off. America was born under that ethos, like you mentioned. And so I think that we can get back there, largely in part because of catalysts like Bitcoin, catalysts like COVID, and awakenings that we've experienced in our recent lifetime.
Well said. The sovereignty rabbit hole is a very serious thing. I mean, I find it continues opening up new things for me and for us on the show. Like, recently getting into this work on the subconscious, just learning how we have programs that we run, right? So you could be the freest, the richest, most powerful, successful person on earth with all the combat skills, black belts, martial arts training in the world. But if you are vulnerable to your own unconscious patterns, behavioral patterns, well, then you're not sovereign. Right? So it's like this idea of freedom is much more multifaceted than just political or economic freedom. There's this whole self-awareness, self-responsibility, self-development aspect to it. And it does seem, when I hear that, the render unto Caesar passage reflected upon, I often am reminded of what Nietzsche said, that everything the state has is stolen and everything it says is a lie. And so the way Christ answered that question, and he said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. I hear him implicitly saying, don't give that motherfucker anything. Like, don't give him anything. He doesn't own anything. Everything he has is stolen and everything he says is a lie. And then render unto gods the things that are God's, and that is everything, right? Do everything for God. And that reminds me of Benjamin Franklin. He said, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. So this idea of like actually walking in your own sovereignty in every way possible and imaginable is the best thing you can do for yourself and everyone. Ultimately, because you are leading by example, right? And hopefully creating a better tomorrow with less Caesars. We've made it a long way, as you said, right? We have the U.S. Constitution instead of a Caesar in the U.S., but unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the West aspiring to be Caesar, and they're acting like Caesar, and they're enforcing lockdowns on people as if they were a Caesar. So, yeah, I'm very grateful for Bitcoin and taking us on this journey of self-discovery and self-empowerment to hopefully learn the deeper meaning of these stories and put them into action in our lives.
Something that just came to mind, and I've thought about this as a cannabis producer, a certain level of compliance, like a baseline level of compliance, allows you to fuck around more. Like if you have a problem with the way the world is going and you have a problem with the economic system, the injustices, all the things, and you just completely defy, don't pay your taxes, don't stop at red lights and do whatever the fuck you want, you stifle your ability to actually not comply with bigger issues. So there's like a certain level of baseline compliance that requires you to be a revolutionary.
Opt-in, opt-out compliance, right? As long as you can opt in or opt out of it, right? So if you decide, hey, you know what, driving on the right-hand side of the road doesn't work for me, so I'm going to leave this jurisdiction and go to one where they drive on the left, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That way you maintain freedom, but you still have restraint, right? You don't want unrestrained individual action. We all come together and say, hey, you know what, if we all drive on the right-hand side of the road, traffic is going to flow a lot more seamlessly. We're all going to be able to achieve our aims a lot better. That's great as long as it's opt in, opt out. But if it's imposed upon you as a threat of, the point of a gun.
Well, let's take that as an example. I mean, we do have imposed restrictions upon us, capital controls, such things. In order to combat that, though, you're better off with some baseline level of compliance. Otherwise, you just get locked up in a cell. You can't do shit.
I don't know about that. I mean, I guess that's one argument, one interpretation of this is like
you pay your taxes.
Just comply so you don't go to jail, so you can keep being a positive influence on people. But I would say you're better off going somewhere where they're not going to throw you in jail for wanting to opt out of a coercive impositional structure.
Well, what about taxes? Like I pay my taxes, you pay your taxes. I would like to not pay my taxes, but then I reduce my ability to spread the good Bitcoin gospel.
Well, there's a lot of ways to play a lot of different games.
I guess we could ask Ross Albrook.
The tax game is a rabbit hole in and unto itself. But yeah, it's not constitutional.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And there's a lot of ways to play it. There's a lot of ways to opt out of inflation. There's a lot of ways to play the taxation game. So I can't be prescriptive about it. I can't say don't do this, don't do that. It's like that would be very undermining of freedom of me to say you should do this, you should do that. But I think it's kind of like the edict with Bitcoin where we don't say, you should all go buy Bitcoin. It's like, no, study Bitcoin. Yeah. Right? That's really good advice. I can even feel comfortable putting a should behind that because you can't lose. How are you going to lose studying Bitcoin?
That's a good point.
You're not going to lose. You're going to be empowered by the knowledge it gives to you. Whether or not you decide to buy Bitcoin at the end of your journey, that's a whole different thing. But the studying itself will empower you in the form of knowledge. And so I think it's something like that, where you just got to learn the lay of the land and how the game is